Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Officer Saraf, S-A-R-A-F, Canton Police Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Police Department?
About 27 years.
Now, were you working with the Canton Police Department on January 28th into January 29th of 2022?
I was.
Do you recall what shift you were working on that occasion?
I was working midnight to 8 shift.
Midnight to 8 a.m., is that correct?
That is correct.
And were you dispatched to a call at approximately 6:05 a.m.?
Yes, I was.
And if you recall, what was the dispatch in regard to, and where specifically were you dispatched to?
It was a call of a person that was unconscious outside, I believe it was 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
Now, that particular area of Canton, are you familiar with that area of Canton?
Yes.
And as far as the town of Canton is concerned with respect to police department, is there sort of different sectors within the town that you would be assigned to patrol?
That's correct.
And the area of Fairview Road, would that be within your sector that you would typically patrol?
That was West Sector.
And how many sectors within the town of Canton are there?
4.
Now, that particular area of Fairview Road, what type of area is that? Is it residential, commercial, or something else?
It's residential.
And the roadway of Fairview Road, there's houses on that roadway, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there any sort of, it's a paved roadway, is that correct?
It is, yes.
The lanes, are they divided by any sort of lines in the middle of it?
Yes.
And who, if anyone, owns or maintains that particular roadway?
The town of Canton does?
Now, you received that dispatch. Where were you, if you recall, when you received the dispatch?
I was, there's a church right next to the police station. I was in that parking lot.
And with respect to the evening of the 28th into the morning of the 29th, what, if anything, were you aware of as far as sort of forecast of the weather or anything sort of impending coming in?
Yeah, it was snowing pretty good that night. It was a snowstorm that evening.
So there's a snowstorm that had been predicted, is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. There was a snowstorm actually occurring around that time, just after 6 a.m.
That's correct.
And at the time that you're responding, a little after 6 a.m., was it light out, dark out, or something?
It was dark out.
And the time, if you know, how much time elapsed sort of between the time that you received the call and the time that you arrived in that area of Fairview?
It's pretty close to a couple of minutes maybe, because I didn't obviously go as fast as you could go because the roads were pretty snowy.
During the course of, you have been working sort of since midnight, correct?
Correct.
And over the course of your work throughout that evening, had you, or what, if anything, had you noticed with regard to snow removal as far as town plows or anything like that?
I don't understand. Were they plowing? Is that your question? They were plowing the roads.
Okay. So there had been some sort of treatment or plowing to the roads prior to your response, as far as you know?
Yes, yes.
What were sort of the road conditions or the visibility or anything like that, if you recall, during your response time to Fairview?
It was snowing pretty well. The roads were definitely slippery. It took me a while to get to the destination.
And if you recall, sir, what was sort of the path of travel that you took from, you mentioned you were in the church parking lot next to the police station, correct?
That's correct.
And where is the police station located in Canton?
So the police station's on Washington Street, 1492 Wash.
And so what was sort of the path of travel that you took from the church lot next to the police station to Fairview?
So I went past the police station onto Chapman Street, and then from Chapman Street I went to Fairview Road. And
when you were approaching Fairview Road, are you taking a right or left or something?
It's a right.
And as you were taking that right onto Fairview, what, if anything, happened with your vehicle as you were taking that turn?
Nothing that I recall.
And that particular, coming from the Chapman side of Fairview, Fairview goes from Chapman and then it goes down to sort of, let's say, the bottom of the street. It connects with another street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is the street that?
Cedar Crest?
Cedar. And if you're coming from the Chapman side down to the Cedar Crest side, what, if anything, is there as far as an elevation? Like, is it uphill, downhill, or flat?
It's down a hill, fairly decent sized hill.
Now, as you are driving down Fairview, what, if anything, you mentioned it was dark outside, correct?
That's correct.
So what, if anything, beyond sort of the headlights on your cruiser, did you utilize for assistance as you were driving down Fairview?
I had a spotlight on the driver's side, a handheld spotlight to try to locate the house in question.
And if I could just ask you a little bit about the type of vehicle that you were driving. So was it, what kind of police cruiser were you driving on?
It's Explorer.
So SUV, is that right?
Yes, SUV, yes.
And as far as those, or the particular cruiser that you were driving on that occasion, what, if anything, is it equipped with as far as cameras or anything like that within the vehicle?
Yeah, it's equipped with a camera for front and back, and in the rear seat of the cruiser.
And so as you're driving down Fairview, you reach out and start to utilize your spotlight sort of on, where is that located on the cruiser?
It's on my left-hand side.
And is that a spotlight that's outside of the cruiser or inside of the cruiser? Where is it located
On the outside of the cruiser, but there's a handle that manipulates it so you can point the spotlight where you want to go.
Okay. So you have some sort of tool within the cruiser where you can manipulate where it points?
That's correct.
And as you're coming down Fairview, utilizing that spotlight, what, if anything, do you observe out in front of you?
Well, as I got to my destination, I saw 3 people on the lawn of in the snow, waving at me.
And initially, when you see these 3 people in the snow, do you have any idea sort of who they are, or male, female, anything like that?
There were 3 women, and I later learned it was a male subject on the ground.
And so when you initially are sort of approaching or getting to the residence, you indicate you see the 3 women waving at you. Could you see, or what, if anything, could you see the body at that point?
I saw that there was somebody on the ground. Yes,
So you could see the 3 women, and you could see a person on the ground.
that's correct.
And at some point, subsequent to this, did you learn the identity of the person on the ground?
I did.
And who did you learn that
John
person?
O'Keefe.
And prior to this dispatch, did you know John O'Keefe in any way?
No.
Now, the 3 females that you saw sort of around Mr. O'Keefe spotting on the ground, at some point later, did you subsequently identify who those 3 people were?
I did.
And who did you identify?
One was Karen Reed. The other one was Miss McCabe and Miss Roberts, I believe.
All right, sir, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, okay, or speak into the microphone.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Now, you arrive on scene, and I'm assuming you get out of your cruiser. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What, if anything, did you do from there?
I walked over to the scene. I first asked, is this person a drug user? He's have an issue with drugs. Somebody said, no, he's a Boston police officer. I said, okay. I checked for a pulse. I couldn't find a pulse. Then I went back to my cruiser and tried to find the AED, which is an automated external defibrillator.
Back just for a second there. So you indicated that you checked for a pulse, correct?
That's correct.
And where on Mr. O'Keefe did you check for?
On his neck, his carotid.
Sort of his carotid, is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you made contact with sort of the skin area in his carotid area on his neck, what, if anything, did you observe as far as Mr. O'Keefe when you did?
I couldn't find any pulse or anything like that, and he was cold to the touch.
Now, when you did this, Mr. O'Keefe, you mentioned was sort of on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
And how was he sort of positioned on the ground?
He was laying on his back.
And as far as your observations of Mr. O'Keefe during this initial time when you're checking the pulse, what, if anything, did you observe sort of on him or around him or anything like that?
I didn't really.
Let me ask it a different way. So as far as you mentioned that when you arrived there, it was snowing out, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so how much snow was in and around or on top of Mr. O'Keefe when you first observed?
It was about, I would say about 6 inches on the ground. There was a light dusting on top of him, I would say.
And what, if any, observations did you make of Mr. O'Keefe and sort of how he was dressed at this time initially that you observed him?
I don't recall what he was wearing.
Now, with reference to the residence at 34 Fairview Road, if you're standing in front of the house on the street facing the house, which side of the property was Mr. O'Keefe lying on his back?
As you're facing the house, it's to the, I'm sorry, go again. Can you say that again, please?
So if you're standing on the street facing the house, was Mr. O'Keefe more to the center of the property, the right of the property, or the left?
He was on the left of the property, yes.
Now, in addition to Mr. O'Keefe, in this sort of area on the left side of the property, what, if any, sort of other landmarks or other things that you observe on that side of the property?
To the left of the property, there was a fire hydrant, a bush, and a flagpole, I believe. To the left, to the farther left, like more near the property line, I would say.
Now, with reference to, mentioned that it was snowing out and there was snow on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
What, if anything else, did you note as far as the weather conditions, as far as wind, temperature, or anything like that?
It was, I would say it was near blizzard conditions. It was snowing really, really hard.
And how cold? Obviously, January, it's snowing out, it was cold, but how cold was it, if you know, when you first arrived?
Less than 32 degrees, I don't know exactly. I mean, it was cold.
So you pull up in that area with the three females. Are they to your right or to your left?
I pulled up, basically, I had my cruiser straight on.
And so which side of the cruiser were the three females and Mr. O'Keefe when you pull up and stop?
Was straight ahead.
Straight ahead, okay. And
A little to the left. Say.
And what, if any, other vehicles did you observe sort of in the roadway in that area where three females were and Mr. O'Keefe?
There was another vehicle in the roadway on the side of the road. I parked basically right behind that.
And do you recall anything about that vehicle, like what type it was, what color, or anything like that?
I don't recall.
Now, with regard to the three females you identified as Ms. Reed, Ms. McCabe, and Ms. Roberts, do you recall where they were in relation to Mr. O'Keefe, each of them, when you first sort of pull up and get out of your cruiser?
So when I arrived, I saw Miss Reed looked like she was giving CPR to him, and she had blood on her face.
Now, in addition to yourself, there are other sort of first responders that are dispatched to this scene as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And of them, who, if anyone else, was on scene at the time that you arrived?
When I arrived, I was the first to arrive. Then there was Officer Mullaney that came a few minutes later, and then the fire department came after him, and I believe Sergeant Good came at, like, within that. I don't know how many minutes, but it was pretty close.
You're first to arrive on scene, and then Mullaney comes a couple of minutes later?
Yes.
About how long was it between when Officer Mullaney arrives and when the fire department arrives?
Couple minutes. I don't.
And at some point after that, a Sergeant Good comes, is that correct?
That's correct.
Sergeant Good is a sergeant with your department?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the fire department, when they arrived, do you recall what type of apparatus they had that arrived on scene?
I believe it was an engine. They usually come with an engine and an ambulance.
So to your recollection, it was at least an ambulance and an engine.
Yeah, yes.
When you were in transit, sort of coming from the church parking lot next to the station to 34 Fairview, what, if anything, did you have activated on your cruiser as far as lights or sirens or anything like that?
I believe I might have my blue lights on. I'm not sure.
As far as the time that you're coming, this is shortly after 6 a.m. in a blizzard, was there, what, if any, sort of other vehicular traffic did you observe en route from church parking lot to 34 Fairview?
There wasn't any that I can recall.
So you go to get your AED device from your cruiser, is that correct?
That's correct.
And around that time that you're retrieving that, what happens then?
The FD, the fire department, came on scene, and they took over care of Mr. O'Keefe.
Now, beyond sort of just checking pulse as far as around that time when you were checking the pulse in the carotid area for Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, other observations did you make with regard to any injuries or anything else on Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, when I first got there, he had blood on his face and it was just wiped away. So that's the only.
So there was blood on his face that was wiped away?
That's correct.
Now, when the fire department arrives on scene and they sort of take over resuscitative efforts with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the person you identified as Miss Reed, firstly, do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing?
Seating at the table right there, black.
Your Honor, does that record reflect identification done by the witness?
Yes.
After the fire department arrived and they sort of take over resuscitative efforts with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, observations did you make of Miss Reed and what she was doing or saying at that time?
Miss Reed was visibly upset. She kept saying, "This is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this," and she was very hysterical.
And
She kept asking, "He's dead. Is he dead? Is he dead?"
and with that specific phraseology, that's something that she kept saying?
Yes.
And by your repetitive nature, I'm assuming it was said something that she said more than once, correct?
Several times, correct.
And when she's saying this, can you describe sort of how she's saying this? I mean, is it a whisper, is it a scream, or is it something else?
She was yelling pretty good.
And with regard to her repetitive question as far as is he dead, what, if any, response did you provide to her in regard to that?
I just said they're doing the best that they can. I don't know.
Now, at some point, did you direct Ms. Reed, the defendant, to somewhere else away from Mr. O'Keefe?
Yeah, I tried to get her out of the elements. I put her in a car. I don't know if it was my cruiser or another cruiser there, but I had her sit in the back seat just to get out of the snow.
And did she stay in that cruiser for any?
She stayed in for a few minutes, and then she was like up and down, up and down.
So sort of in and out of whatever car you put her into?
That's correct.
When she would come out of the car, where would she go?
She was just walking around. From what I remember,
Now, with reference to Mr. O'Keefe, he's laying on his back on the ground. That location, where was that in relation to the roadway of Fairview Road?
I would say about 20 feet off the road.
So if it's 20 feet off of the road, is it fair to say that was on sort of the front lawn of 34 Fairview?
Yes, that's correct.
And at some point, the fire department takes Mr. O'Keefe's body off of the lawn, is that correct?
That is
And where
Correct.
were you in relation to Mr. O'Keefe when that happened?
I don't remember.
And if you don't remember, do you recall anything about sort of what the ground looked like when Mr. O'Keefe was lifted up?
I don't recall. I didn't.
Now, that area around where Mr. O'Keefe was, when you initially come up, you see him on the ground and you check for a pulse. What, if anything, did you note around Mr. O'Keefe's body as far as the condition of or disturbance of the snow around?
I noticed that there were footprints and track marks around the body itself. There was none coming from the residence or the area. It was just right around the body itself.
And so the position that Mr. O'Keefe is lying on his back on the lawn, correct?
Correct.
Is his head closer to the house or the street or something else?
I believe his head was closest to the house.
And the footprints that you're talking about, was that between sort of his feet in the street or above his head, or where was it in relation to his leg?
Basically all around him because people were walking around him.
And as far as beyond sort of the immediate area above his head, between his head and the house, what if any footprints or what if any disturbance in the snow did you observe up there?
I didn't see any.
Now, Officer Saraf, about how long was it that you were on scene?
I want to say about an hour and a half.
And at some point, the fire department transports Mr. O'Keefe from the scene, is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you know to what facility he was transported to?
I don't recall where they went.
And after Mr. O'Keefe was taken away by the fire department, as far as the three females, Ms. Reed, Ms. McCabe, and Ms. Roberts, do you know where they went or what they did following that?
They, after talking to Sergeant Good, they left in their car. I don't know where they went. The car that was there, they left.
Now, at any point in the time that you were on scene before they left, did you have any conversation with any of the three of them?
I asked, where were they? What happened? And what were they doing?
And
Yeah.
who specifically did you talk to, if you recall?
Well, I asked Miss Reed, and she couldn't really tell me too much about what happened. Miss McCabe said that they were drinking in a couple bars downtown.
Let me just stop you before, as far as, so just sticking with Ms. Reed.
Yep.
You asked her what happened, and you indicated she didn't really tell you much.
No,
Why not? What was her condition like at that point?
she was very upset.
So the same upset that you were describing earlier, did that sort of continue throughout the time that she was on scene while you were there?
I would say yes.
And at some point, did you speak to Ms. McCabe without reference to what she told you?
I'm sorry.
At some point while you're on scene, did you speak to either Ms. McCabe or Ms. Roberts without reference to what they told you?
No. I mean,
Let me rephrase.
rephrase it, yeah.
At some point when you're on scene, did you have occasion to have a conversation with Ms. McCabe?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point when you were on scene, did you have occasion to have a conversation with Ms. Roberts?
I didn't speak with Miss Roberts, I don't believe.
Was there someone else from your department that was speaking with Ms. Roberts on scene? You know.
I believe Sergeant Good or Officer Mulaney was.
So one of the other two officers that were there.
Correct.
Now, following Sergeant Good's arrival, who, if anyone else from your department, arrived on scene at some point?
Detective Sergeant Lank, and Lieutenant Gallagher.
And if you know, when was their arrival in relation to sort of when you arrived?
It was light out, so I want to say maybe 7 o'clock-ish.
And so for the period that you were on scene, you said it was about an hour and a half, is that correct?
That's about right.
The weather conditions that you described sort of when you first arrived, what, if any, change occurred in the weather conditions from the time that you arrived and the time that you left the scene?
The conditions lightened up a little bit. I mean, it was still snowing, but
Still snowing, still cold, correct?
that's correct.
The wind, was that still persistent as well?
I would say yes.
Now, at some point after Ms. Reed, the defendant, left the scene, did she come back?
She did.
And do you know how long a period it was that she was gone between when she left and when she came back?
Just a few minutes.
And do you know why she came back?
I don't know.
And when she returned to the scene, who, if anyone, did you speak with her further at that point?
No,
Who, if anyone, did you observe her to be speaking with?
I don't recall.
Now, the initial ambulance that showed up took and transported Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, after that ambulance left and Ms. Reed came back to the scene, what, if any, other apparatus from the fire department arrived on scene at that point?
Another ambulance came.
And who, if anyone, went in that ambulance for transport?
They took Miss Reed to the hospital.
And do you know what hospital that she went to?
I don't recall.
Now, Officer Saraf, do you recognize what's depicted up on the screen as exhibit number 8?
Yes,
And what do you recognize that?
it's the house, 34 Fairview.
And that's the house that you responded to on that date, is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
And what's contained in that photograph, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed roughly when you arrived on that date?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Direct your attention to this. This is just a laser point.
Yep.
I'm trying not to point it in anybody's eyes. But, basically, this button here, if you just click on that, and that will shine wherever you want. Okay. So from this photograph in exhibit number 8, sir, where Mr. O'Keefe's body was when you first arrived, is that visible in this photograph or no?
I would say it would be over more to the left.
Okay, so further off to the left, is that correct?
That's correct.
Before we get to that, just briefly, Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 13. You could please enlarge, thank you. Now, Officer Sheriff, do you recognize what's contained in this exhibit number 13?
It's a street.
Fair enough. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes. Sorry. Let's see.
So what I placed before you as exhibit 13 is that's what's up on the screen.
Yes, this is.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what Fairview Road looked like around the time that you were dispatched and arrived on scene?
Yes.
Absent the lighting condition, you mentioned it was dark when you arrived, correct?
That is correct.
So this is sometime after when the sun has come up.
Correct.
If I could ask you to flip to the next exhibit number 14, if I could have that one. And again, officer, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit 14?
Yes.
And you were testifying earlier about sort of footprints in and around where Mr. O'Keefe was, is that correct?
That is correct.
And what's depicted on the screen in exhibit number 14, is that fair and accurate portrayal of the footprints that you were talking?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Ron?
Yes.
So now I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit 18. Thank you, Ms. Cameron. If you could enlarge that just a little bit. Thank you so much. Now, from this photograph, well, first and foremost, do you recognize what's depicted up in exhibit 18 on the screen here?
Yes.
And this is 34 Fairview Road, correct?
That is correct.
And in regard to, you had mentioned some sort of landmarks off to the left side of the property, you're facing the property from the street, correct?
Yes.
And if you could, using that laser pointer that I placed up there before you, if you could direct the jury's attention to first those landmarks that you observed. I'm sorry, officer, if you could, while you're.
Oh, sorry.
If you could just describe what you're.
So there's the flagpole right there, there's a bush there, and right there, I believe, is the fire hydrant.
And so where in relation to this photograph, if you can see it here, was Mr. O'Keefe's body when you first got it?
It's right in this area right here.
Now, if I could turn back just a moment, when you indicated that you were coming up to the scene and you could see the three females sort of waving and Mr. O'Keefe on the ground, correct?
That is correct.
About how far away were you from them when you first observed them or first saw them?
About 20 feet or so.
And when you are driving down Fairview, if you could describe to the jury, where is your direction, sort of where are you direct as far as you're driving a vehicle? Are you looking straight in front of you, or are you looking out the window, a combination of both, or?
I was looking for the house numbers, trying to find the house where it was, and there was, I saw the motor vehicle parked on the side of the road.
And that sort of leads to my next question, sir. So what did you see first? Did you see the vehicle parked in front of you, or did you see the people off to the side of it?
I saw the vehicle.
May I approach this to retrieve your honor?
Yes.
Do you want this?
So, Officer Saraf, you had testified earlier in regard to a camera within your cruiser, correct?
That's correct.
And subsequent to that day, have you seen the video of your arrival to the scene from the cruiser camera perspective?
I saw it once.
Okay. And, Your Honor, I would seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit the cruiser camera stream 1 from cruiser 683.
Or is there an objection?
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can get you across. I'm sorry for the back and forth, Mr. Oxford, but if I could ask the lights again. Ms. Gilman, if you could play what's now been marked as Exhibit 25. And if you could just pause it right there, Ms. Gilman. Okay, so Officer Saraf, what's up on the screen, is that what you recall as far as the sort of visibility and the roadway conditions when you first left the church parking lot?
Yes.
And this is you sort of leaving from the church parking lot as you're going to 34th Fair, correct?
Yes.
Now, there are a number of different sort of things up on this screen. There's an indication as far as the speed that the vehicle is going at, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And where is that located, if you could, with the laser pointer there?
Sorry. Whoops, sorry.
Now, along sort of the bottom of that particular video, there's an indication as far as mic, brakes, lights, sign, correct?
Correct.
If those are activated, is there any sort of change in sort of the depiction there? Does it change sort of color or anything like that that you're aware of?
I don't know.
Okay. And the 683 on the bottom right corner, is that the cruiser that you were in that day?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, as far as sort of the top middle of this video, there's a date and a time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As far as you're aware, that date and time that's up there, that's accurate to when this occurred, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we're sort of looking in real time, correct?
Correct.
So, Ms. Gilman, if you could just let it run from this. Ms. Gilman, I'm sorry, if you could stop with this briefly. So, Officer Saraf, this road you're traversing at this point, this is Washington Street, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And at some point, you're going to then travel through and then take a right onto Fairview, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you could, just for the jury's sake, as you approach Fairview and as you're taking that right turn, just direct their attention to the fact that that's when you're turning onto Fairview.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Gilman, you can go ahead and continue.
So this right here is Chapman Street. This right here is Fairview.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it there for 1 second. So, officer, similar to as the turn onto Fairview, at some point, if you observe the point at which you believe you sort of illuminated your spotlight on the side of the cruiser, if you could just speak up and draw the jury's attention to that as well.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could continue.
Right about now, I believe I put the spotlight on.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could just sort of run it from this point till about the 4-minute mark, and then I'd ask you to.
Right there.
Right there. Now, Officer Saraf, this is, you were testifying earlier as far as the vehicle in front of you that you observed first, and then sort of the parties off to your left as far as the 3 females waving and Mr. O'Keefe on the ground, correct?
That is correct.
And if you could, just using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to number 1, where the vehicle is that you observed in front of you, and then number 2, where you observed the 3 females and Mr. O'Keefe on the ground.
So here's the vehicle right there, and the females are right there.
Thank you, sir. Now, Ms. Gilman, if you wouldn't mind just running this straight through until about 7.5 minutes. Just one moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Prosecution to. I have no further questions to this witness, Your Honor.
All right. Will there be a cross-exam? Because this may be a good time to stop if there is.
There will be a cross-examination. Good morning, Officer Saraf. Good morning. Is there anything that you would like to change or amend or modify about your testimony yesterday that you thought about overnight?
No.
Did you discuss your testimony with any person between the time you got off the stand yesterday and coming back to the courtroom?
No.
Officer Saraf, I want to ask you a question about, or a couple of questions about something called a dispatch log. You know what a dispatch log is?
Yes.
What is a dispatch log? Can you describe to the jurors?
Just notes saying what time calls come in and sometimes a short synopsis of what happened on the call.
It's an official document generated by the Canton Police Department, correct?
That's correct.
And it's kept in the ordinary course of business?
Yes.
It's created at or near the time of the event that it's recording?
Yes.
And it's supposed to be accurate?
Yes.
Is that yes?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
sir.
And in fact, what it has is the dispatch details of the event that's in question. Whatever officers show up, what time they show up, the order in which they show up, the location to which they're dispatched, things of that nature, correct?
Yes.
Have you looked at the dispatch log in this case?
No, I have not.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
This has been pre-marked as Exhibit 27. Take a glance at that and tell me if you recognize that document.
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
It looks like the log in question.
Oh, okay, so that's the dispatch log for what date?
The 29th?
Do you see your name somewhere on that dispatch log?
Yes.
To the right, one of the 3 officers that was called to the scene.
Yes.
And that looks like the dispatch log for the call out that you were testifying about yesterday. Is that right?
That's correct.
May I approach you on it?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I publish this as we
Yes.
discuss it? That is really small font. May I approach one more time?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not an eye contest.
That I would not
Eye
pass.
exam, I should say. Oh, look at that. The magic of technology. All right. You can either look up on the screen or look at the dispatch log that's in front of you. I'll try to look at the one on the screen, but my eyes aren't that great either. If you look to the right, there appear to be 3 entries for the dispatch of the officers that were on the scene about which you testified yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, it has this dispatch log shows that you, and then Officer Mullaney, and then Sergeant Good all arrived to 32 Fairview that morning within 7 seconds of each other, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
It actually has Officer Mullaney arriving first at 6:09:26. You see that?
Yes.
And you see that it also has 3 seconds later at 6:09:29 you arriving. Is that right?
6:29 it says. Excuse me, it's 6:09, yes. you're
6:09 and
correct.
29 seconds.
Yes, I'm sorry, yep.
That's okay. And then it has Sergeant Good arriving 4 seconds after you at 6:09 and 33 seconds, correct?
Sure, yep.
So all 3 of you, according to the official document generated by Canton Police Department for this event, has Officer Mullaney arriving first, you arriving second, Sergeant Good arriving third, all within 7 seconds of each other, correct?
Correct.
That is completely false, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you've looked at your dispatch, your dash cam, correct? And clearly, we saw it yesterday. You arrive and there's nobody else on scene.
Correct.
That was at about 6:10 a.m. that you arrived, correct?
About that, yes.
And then Officer Mullaney actually arrives after you about 6:11 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
And Sergeant Good does not arrive, according to your own dash cam, until about 6:16, a little after 6:15.
Yep.
All right. So right off the bat, the official Canton Police Department dispatch log, one of the first documents generated in any investigative event, that's completely wrong, right?
The times are, yes.
Well, the times and the orders, right? I mean, not only did Officer Mullaney not arrive first, you arrived first.
That's
And
correct.
then he arrived.
Sure.
So that's 2 things that are wrong about just that, correct?
Sure.
And then it has Sergeant Good arriving 4 seconds after you, which is also incorrect.
Yep.
He didn't arrive until about 6 or 7 minutes after you, right?
Sure.
All right. Have you reviewed this document in the past?
This? No.
You've never seen the dispatch log?
No.
Did you ever seek to make sure that the dispatch log that's so important and so vital in an investigation was actually accurate before it was turned over to the defense, for instance?
No, I didn't.
All right, but without that dispatch log, without your dash cam, we would be relying on your dispatch log to be true and accurate. Is that right?
Other than what I'm saying that would happen, correct.
And do you think it's accurate otherwise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not in order, no. It's not. Not in order, no.
Other than
In
the
time.
order and the time that the officer's responding, is it correct in all other respects in your mind?
Can you rephrase?
Sure.
Say it one more time.
Let's take away the order and the time that the officers responded. Ignore that. Is the dispatch log otherwise accurate?
Yes.
Take a look at the left-hand column where it's highlighted in green. What's that address?
Highlighting in green?
On the screen, it's highlighted in green.
I'm sorry.
I didn't see anything.
I don't have the document.
That's
you're
okay.
holding.
It says 32 Fairview.
Did you arrive to 32 Fairview Road?
No.
You arrived to 34 Fairview Road,
That's correct. Yep.
So that even the location on the dispatch log is faulty, is that right?
Sure, yep.
May I approach you on it?
Yes.
Yep.
You testified at a grand jury in April of 2022, correct?
I did.
At that grand jury, do you remember telling the grand jurors what address you actually responded to?
The lights, please.
Don't recall. Probably what I said in the grand
Would it
jury.
refresh your recollection if you took a quick glance
Sure.
at a copy of your grand jury testimony? May I approach you, Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Officer Saraf, I've done you the favor of highlighting a page on page 9. Where did you indicate to the grand jurors that you actually
It
arrived?
says 35 Fairview.
I know what it says. I'm asking if it refreshes your recollection that you actually testified under oath that you responded to 35 Fairview Road.
Yes.
And that is incorrect as well, isn't it?
Yes.
May I approach you, Honor?
Yes.
Have you reviewed any of the other officers' reports that relate to your dispatch out to the location that you've been testifying to?
No, I did not.
Did you ever review Sergeant Good's report?
No.
Are you aware that have you ever discussed with Sergeant Good that he wrote in his official report that you responded to 32 Fairview Road?
No.
And of course, we just talked about the fact that the dispatch log lists 32 Fairview Road and not 34 Fairview Road, correct?
Correct.
So none of the initial police reports, not the dispatch log, not your police report, apparently not Sergeant Good's, list 34 Fairview Road as the actual location where you responded that morning, correct?
As far as I know, yes. Yes, sir.
Was there an effort on your part or anybody else's, to your knowledge, to mask the actual address of Brian Albert's house as 34 Fairview Road?
No. No.
All those were just mistakes,
Yes.
over and over and over.
Yes.
When you made contact with the victim and the women that you described yesterday, did you see any evidence that any of the women had been engaged in life-saving measures?
Yes.
What did you see?
It appeared that Karen Reed was doing mouth-to-mouth on John O'Keefe.
You saw, I don't want to get too graphic, but you saw blood on her face?
Yes, I did.
You saw blood on his face?
That's correct.
You saw blood in her hair?
No, I didn't see anything.
You didn't notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
Okay. But certainly blood on her face from having engaged in some sort of CPR activity?
Yes.
Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, you said?
It looked like it, yes.
Okay. You also saw Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting with chest compressions. Is that
Objection?
right?
I'm not asking a question. Who's
Sorry?
objection? There's just no question.
No, you can ask it. The question hasn't been asked yet. Finish the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you also see Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting in chest compressions?
I don't remember who exactly it was, but it appeared that somebody was doing.
What about
Arches.
the third woman, Jennifer McCabe?
They were all around the body.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe ever engage with John O'Keefe as he lay on the ground and assist in any life-saving measures? Did you witness that?
I don't recall.
But you do recall my client engaged.
Yes.
Isn't it true that Jennifer McCabe pulled you aside while my client and Carrie Roberts stayed with John O'Keefe and began engaging you in a conversation?
Yes.
And she was providing some sort of a narrative to you, correct?
Correct.
While the other two women are trying to save John O'Keefe's life, she's talking to you.
For brief seconds, I would say.
For brief seconds?
Yes.
You saw the dash cam video. Was those several minutes on the dash cam video where she's standing and having a conversation with you? Are those the brief seconds?
I don't know what time frame you're talking about, Tim.
I'm talking about right after you got there.
Right after I got there.
Correct. Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe do anything physically to help John O'Keefe?
No, I didn't see anything.
Did Jennifer McCabe offer to you during that brief seconds that you described, this narrative that she was having, this conversation she was having with you, did she ever offer the fact that she was standing in front of her sister's house?
No.
Did she ever offer the fact that her brother-in-law, who lives in the house, is a first responder?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were you apprised at any time while you were out there that the homeowner was a first responder?
Objection.
Sustained.
Based on your observations between Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those women appeared to be more focused on trying to save John's life in the moment?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Between Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those two women, based on your observations, appeared to you to be more focused on physically trying to save John O'Keefe's life in the moment?
At that point, it was Karen Reed.
You would agree with me, Officer Saraf, that in any investigation, details matter, accuracy matters, correct?
Sure.
Reports are written in police investigations in order to memorialize observations, things heard, seen, experienced by the officers, correct?
Yes.
And generally speaking, you're trained to write those reports and memorialize those observations as quickly as possible so that things are fresh in your memory.
Correct.
You don't want to write a report about an incident that you respond to today, 2 years from now.
No.
As a matter of fact, you're trained exactly the opposite. When you respond to a scene, it's somewhat important, you need to get it down on paper as quickly as possible for detail and accuracy, right?
Yes.
You did, in fact, write a report, a supplemental report for this investigation where you laid out your observations of that morning, correct?
That's correct.
These are called incident reports, correct?
Yes.
I'm holding what appears to be a multi-page document that is entitled an incident report. May I approach?
Yes.
Take a look at the tabbed page. And tell me if you recognize what's on that page.
I'm sorry.
Do you recognize that? All I'm asking you is,
Oh,
you
yes.
recognize that as your report?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you write that?
Yes, sir.
When did you write that?
I believe the morning of,
So that would be January 29th,
that's correct.
a little bit later in the morning after you left the scene.
Yes.
And you were reflecting back on what had just happened minutes or hours before, correct?
Yep.
And you were trying to be as truthful as possible, correct?
Yes.
You were trying to be as accurate as possible,
Yes.
as comprehensive as possible,
Yes.
and as thorough as possible.
Yes.
You wrote in that report, quote, Karen Reed kept screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She was severely distraught and not able to tell me what happened. Correct?
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
There was no limit to the amount of words that you could put on the page, correct?
Nope.
Matter of fact, there's a ton of white space that's left unutilized, right?
That's correct.
You could have taken as much time as you wanted to in writing this report. Is that right?
Sure.
And it was, is that yes?
Yes.
There was no reason to abbreviate anything. Is that right?
No.
And you tried to be as accurate as you possibly could in that moment
Yes.
and put everything down in that report that reflected what you experienced and what you observed and what you heard that morning, correct?
Yes.
And the only statement you attribute to my client on that morning, just hours after the incident or minutes after the incident, was she kept repeating, "Is he dead?" Correct?
Yes.
You were interviewed by Michael Proctor the next day, weren't you?
I don't know what day it was, but I think you
Would it
would
refresh your recollection to take a look at a report?
Sure.
May I approach you on?
Yes.
Take a look at that report that's dated March 15, but reflects an interview on January 30, and then tell me if you recognize it.
All right.
Looks like his report.
Okay, that's that's Trooper Proctor's report of an interview that he did with you, correct?
Yes.
And if you look on the second page, paragraph about what you stated to Trooper Proctor.
That's highlighted? Is
I
that?
highlighted it for you, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell Trooper Proctor, let me withdraw that, ask it a different way. Were you trying to be as thorough and comprehensive with Trooper Proctor as you were in your own report?
Yes.
You weren't holding anything back in that interview, correct?
No.
You wanted to be as truthful and as honest as you possibly could,
Yep.
and as comprehensive as you possibly could, correct?
Yes.
You told Trooper Proctor that you could, quote, hear Karen Reed continually state, "Is he dead?" as the paramedics treated the victim. Officer Saraf then seen Karen inside her friend's vehicle, correct?
Correct.
So the only statement you attributed to my client the day after this incident was those three words, "Is he dead?" that she continually repeated. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
In the two times that you were asked to reflect back on exactly what happened that morning, on January 29th and January 30th, both times you attributed only three words to my client having been repeated continually in her distraught state. "Is he dead?" Right?
Yes.
And she wasn't saying that calmly, I'm assuming.
No.
Matter of fact, you used the word she was severely distraught. Is that right?
That's correct.
When you say severely distraught, we saw part of that on your dash cam. She was emotional,
Yes.
upset,
Yes.
focused on John,
Yes.
trying to save his life,
Yes.
and asking, what was the question that she asked?
Is he dead?
Over and over and over, correct?
Correct.
Then you were asked to testify in April of 2022, April 14th of 2022, at a state-run grand jury by the Commonwealth.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Lally was the fine prosecutor who was asking you the questions, correct?
Yes.
Between the time you wrote your report on January 29th and you gave a statement officially on January 30th, between that time and when you testified in April of 2022, do you have any meetings with anybody from the Massachusetts State Police?
No.
Did you have any meetings with Mr. Lally?
No.
Did Mr. Lally put you on the stand without talking to you first?
No. For this trial?
Nope. I'm just, the dates in question are up to April 14th, 2022, the grand jury.
I don't recall.
You don't recall if you met with either Mr. Lally or any of his contemporaries to discuss your potential testimony?
Not. I don't recall meeting with him for that. No. The one time I met with him in his office was a couple of weeks ago with this.
In preparation for this testimony?
Correct.
But your testimony now is that he didn't meet with you or you did not connect with him to discuss your testimony before the April grand jury?
I don't recall.
When you did testify in that grand jury, you changed your story, didn't you?
No.
You believe you testified completely consistently at that grand jury as you had in your report?
I testified for what I remember what happened, sir.
I see. Was your memory better in April than it was minutes or hours after the event?
Was it better?
Was it better or worse?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you think your memory gets better as time goes on?
Not usually, no.
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 Usually it's the opposite, isn't it?
Yes.
Memories get foggy, they fade.
Yes.
Which is why you write reports the day of the incident, if you can, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what you testified to at the grand jury? in April of 2022?
The whole thing?
No,
Oh, I-
sorry, that was a bad question on my part. Just as it relates to statements attributed to my client.
Yes.
What was your exact testimony in April of 2022?
I'd have to look at my,
Would it refresh your recollection if you saw a copy of your
sure.
grand jury transcript? May I approach?
Yes.
Look at page 18. Let me know once you remember, once you review that and tell me if that refreshes your recollection.
Yes, it does.
In fact, on April 14th, 2022, months after this event, for the first time, you said, quote, and these are your words, tell me if I get them right. She, this is my fault. I don't know. She said, I can't believe this happened. I mean, she kept asking if he was going to die, if he's dead. And, I just basically said, we're doing the best that we could, end quote.
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
So in April of 2022, for the first time, you attributed the phrase, "This is my fault. I can't believe this happened," to my client, correct?
That's correct.
But nowhere in your official report did you say that,
That's correct.
And nowhere in your interview with Trooper Proctor the next day did you say that.
That's correct.
You think that was a pretty important omission on your part?
It was an oversight.
An oversight.
Yes, sir.
That a woman whom you made contact with, standing over the body of a fallen police officer, said to you, "This is my fault." Just missed that one. Yes?
Yes, I missed it. Yeah, I didn't write it down.
And then, of course, you testified yesterday and your statement changed again, right?
I don't,
You remember what you said yesterday to these jurors?
word for word?
Well, I wrote it down. Let's see if this helps.
Yep.
Yesterday you said, that my client said, quote, "It's all my fault. I did this," end quote.
Yes.
Remember that? Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
But you didn't say that at the grand jury.
No.
And you didn't say that to Trooper Proctor.
No, sir.
And you didn't put it in your report.
That's correct.
If you were to testify in another 2 or 3 weeks, you think her statement would just keep evolving?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now I want to shift gears for a second and talk about what Ms. Reed actually said that morning. You said that you reviewed your dash cam video, correct?
Once.
Do you remember when you arrived, one of the first things out of your mouth was the question, what happened?
Yes.
That would be a natural question to
Sure.
ask.
Yep.
Trying to assess the scene and assess the situation.
Absolutely.
And you would want to listen closely to what that answer was, correct?
Sure.
Ms. Reed did in fact answer you, didn't she?
I don't recall what she said.
She said, quote, "My boyfriend, I left him and he never came home," end quote. Correct?
I don't know. I don't recall.
You agree, we've already agreed, that details matter in any investigation.
Absolutely.
They certainly matter in this investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to take a look at what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 26. This is about the This is about the 3:50 run time. I'm not looking at the actual. I'm not looking at the actual time of day over here. I'm looking at the run time, which is down at the bottom. So if Mr. Bates, you could put this at about the 3:50 mark. Can you pause it? Just to orient everybody, does this appear to be your dash cam?
Yes, sir?
Same dash cam you were looking at yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and play it, Mr. Bates. And pause it. Officer Saraf, just like it's not an eye exam, it's not a hearing exam either. I'm going to do the best I can to raise the volume. And Officer Saraf, I want to focus your attention, if you wouldn't mind, on 9 seconds after you say what happened. Just count in your head and listen very, very carefully to the woman's voice that responds and what she says. Go ahead. Pause it. Very, very hard to hear. Have you listened to that before?
No.
Does it appear to you that she said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home?
I couldn't understand anything.
Okay. Let's replay it one more time. We'll turn the volume up one more time right at that moment. Listen for a woman's voice just under.
I'm not hearing what you're saying on this.
Sorry, I was asking Officer Saraf, please listen to, there's a din of noise, obviously, road noise, wind noise, etc. It's your dash cam, the audio from your dash cam. Once you close the door, listen very carefully, about 9 seconds after you say what happened, for a woman's voice and see if you can make out what that voice says.
Sure.
One more time. Stop. Did you hear? I left him and he never came home.
I couldn't understand what they were saying.
You couldn't understand that?
No.
Do you want to hear it one more time?
No,
I don't think it.
no. Turn the lights on, please.
Now, if my client had said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home, would that be something that you would find important to put in your report?
Objection.
Sustained.
Let's move to another area of the dash cam video. I want to keep playing it at the 28-minute mark, 28-minute and 20-second mark or so.
So can I see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please?
Do you recognize your dash cam video being on the left of the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you looked at Sergeant Good's dash cam video, which is squared up on the right side of the screen?
No.
You've never seen it?
No.
Okay. Does it appear to you that these are two different perspectives of the same scene? In other words, you see the car or the SUV on the left side of the screen right here, correct?
Yes, sir.
See that same SUV right there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that appear to be two different perspectives, two different angles?
Yes.
Of basically the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to the individuals to the left of the SUV right here. There's a person wearing a hood with fur on it. Is that Carrie Roberts, to your memory?
I don't know.
Okay. There appears to be another person with a darker jacket standing just in front of that person with the hood and fur. You see that person?
Yes?
Okay. I'm going to ask you to focus on the person in the darker jacket.
Sure.
I believe, and the only reason I'm asking you to focus at this point is because I want to try to play this just once and see if you recognize what's depicted in the video.
Sure.
What I expect you may see is this person move out of sight behind the SUV, and then in the background, there's an SUV parked in the driveway. Pay special attention to that portion of the SUV and see if you see that person in the dark jacket pass from right to left in front of that SUV as if they're going to the house. Let's go ahead and play it. Go ahead and pause it. Have you seen the person in the dark jacket leave the view?
Yes.
Did she appear to go behind the SUV?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and play it. Go ahead and stop track. And now I'm going to ask to draw your attention to that car with snow on it. Pay special attention to that car as the film continues to run. Go ahead. Pause. Do you see a person standing in front of the car?
It appears to be a person. Yes.
Walking from right to left?
Yes.
Would that be toward the house?
Yes, it would be.
Okay. And also, if you wouldn't mind switching your perspective, now you're looking more at the front of the house. Continue watching the film and see if you see that same person walking toward the house. Okay, stop. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see. Oh, yeah. Yes. I saw the shadow, yes.
Right. Shadow of a person
Yes.
walking toward the front of the house.
Yes.
That was Jennifer McCabe going into the house, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Was it a person going into the house?
It was a person, yes.
Did you give anybody any permission to go into the house?
No, not my own.
Would you think that a witness in a homicide scene, we can go ahead and raise the lights, thank you. Would you think that a witness at a homicide scene being allowed to go into a house to make contact with other witnesses?
I didn't know it was a homicide scene, sir.
If I could finish my question. Do you think it's appropriate for a witness at a potential homicide scene, an unconscious person scene, whatever, crime scene,
Yes.
to make contact with other witnesses and begin discussing the situation unsupervised?
Can you rephrase that question, sir?
Do you think that's an appropriate thing to have happen?
I have no answer for that, sir. I don't know what you're asking.
Officer Saraf, when you go to a crime scene,
Yes, sir.
one of the first things that you'd want to do is secure the scene and separate witnesses so that interviews could be conducted, correct?
Sure.
You wouldn't want witnesses just cavorting together and getting their story straight, right?
Correct.
You'd want to avoid that at all costs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And why is that?
So they can't collaborate their story.
Yet there was a person walking from the area where a body was found in the lawn of a house, walking into the house to make contact with other individuals, correct?
It appeared that way, yes, sir.
Does that seem appropriate to you?
No.
Of course not. We've talked a bit about what you did and didn't hear at the scene from my client. At any point when you were at that location, did you hear my client repeating the phrase, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him"?
She said, I hit him? No, I didn't hear that part.
You never heard her whisper it, yell it, say it, or otherwise?
Not that I recall.
If you had heard that statement, you likely would have written it down, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You likely would have reported that to Trooper Proctor the next day, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You likely would have mentioned it in your grand jury testimony, correct?
Yes.
And you did none of those things because you did not hear that statement, correct?
I did not hear that, no.
Sir, you were at 34 Fairview for more than an hour before you cleared the scene, right?
Yes, sir.
You were at the location of the body of John O'Keefe.
Yes.
In other words, you just didn't stay in your cruiser. You walked out to where John O'Keefe was.
No, I was in my cruiser at different times.
Must have been a bad question.
Okay.
You didn't just stay in your cruiser. At points, you got out of your cruiser, walked over, made contact with the women, and you were standing next to the body.
Yes.
And you were obviously looking around. You noticed some footprints,
Yes.
and you even noticed some lack of footprints.
That's correct.
So you were being observant at the area of the body
Yes.
and the area adjacent to the body.
Yes.
You were looking for anything that might have been out of place,
Yes.
anything of any evidentiary value, correct?
Yes.
You never saw or otherwise observed or located a single piece of taillight material, did you?
No.
You certainly didn't see 45 pieces of broken plastic or taillight material, did you?
No.
You never located or otherwise observed John O'Keefe's missing shoe
No.
or any other clothing of his.
I didn't. No.
Officer Saraf, did you ever think to look inside the house for
No.
that missing shoe?
No.
That never crossed your mind?
No.
You think that might have been a smart thing to do at the time?
Objection, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
Sure. Do you think that would have been appropriate protocol when dealing with a body laying on a lawn that is partially unclothed to look inside the house of the lawn?
No.
You didn't think that would have been an appropriate protocol
No.
for you or anybody else?
No.
Obviously, you did not conduct a search of that house, did you?
Nope.
And you're aware that to this day, no law enforcement officer ever conducted a search of that house?
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything, Mr. Lally?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
You were asked some questions and you were shown a dispatch log, is that correct?
That's correct.
And dispatch log, as far as the Canton Police Department is concerned, are you aware of sort of how or when or who creates that?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of how that document sort of comes into being?
So when a call comes in, an officer is at the desk, and usually the first thing they would do is dispatch, get people going to the scene, and get everybody rolling as far as if they need FD, police, whatever resources they need, and basically then type in what the call is and who's going.
So fair to say it's more important to get assets allocated to a scene, especially in the case of an emergency, which is why someone's calling 911, than to ensure that the dispatch time is correct down to the second.
Absolutely.
Now, you were asked some questions about different things that you heard the defendant say, correct?
That's correct.
And you were shown specifically some grand jury testimony from April of 2022 in which you indicated during that testimony that the defendant stated, "This is my fault."
Yes.
And is that based on your memory of what she said?
Yes.
And you also testified yesterday along those same lines, correct?
Correct.
What you testified to before this jury, as far as your memory, is that accurate as to what happened on that scene, January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Now, prior to this call, did you know Kerry Roberts?
No.
Did you know Karen Reed?
No.
Did you know John O'Keefe?
No.
Did you know Jennifer McCabe?
No.
Based on what you've seen as far as the dash camera, would you be able to differentiate between Jennifer McCabe or Kerry Roberts from that dash camera footage?
No.
Now, while you were on scene, did you see anybody from 34 Fairview Road, from that address, come outside?
No.
Did Did you see anybody from any address on that entire street for the entire 90 minutes that you were there come outside?
No.
Now, you were asked some questions about some different addresses on Fairview, whether they be 32 or 35. Do you know where either 32 or 35 is located in relation to 34?
It would be next to each other in sequential order.
Nothing further.
Okay.
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, you're all set, officer. Thank you.